Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host of Inspire Nation. If you're a point of change in your life, thinking of making a big change, in the middle of making a big change, or simply have change in the air, then do we have the show for you. Today we'll be talking with life coach extraordinaire and host of the Fire It Up with CJ show, CJ Liu, about transitions and transformation. We'll talk about how to know when it's time to make a change, how to make it through smoothly, and what to do when it's thrust upon you. That plus why big change shouldn't scare you, how we can surf the wave of change, and why sometimes resistance is futile unless you're kale in a blizzard in the Northeast. So welcome back to the show, CJ. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine. How about you?
I am ready to shine. In fact, we've just gotten through a blizzard ourselves. And so I am shining. I've been out shoveling and snow blowing and checking on the kale all morning.
And how's the state of the kale?
The kale is miracle kale. It's dumbfounding. It has made it through, we're just outside New York City. It's made it through the whole winter. We're almost at the end of January here. And it's been rough the last few weeks because it's been below freezing almost every day. And people write off plants in the winter. But with some love and a little bit of care, they've been making it through. So for the snowstorm, I built a little mini greenhouse. Jessica, actually, she's grown so strong recently. She took care of moving a bunch of cinder blocks to set up a frame for this thing. She's feeling strong.
Yeah.
So she moved the cinder blocks, and then I got some plastic tarp material, and I built like this mini greenhouse. And we got, I don't know, somewhere between 2.5, maybe close to 3 feet. And the kale were all sort of snugly and warm underneath. Wow. They're still kicking today. So I've got them still under the plastic sheath because there's so much snow around, but they're getting sunshine now. And in a couple days, it's predicted to be rain, and that'll warm up the roots. And so I think we made it through the scare. And if nothing else, this is an experiment in love and heart. They're like pets now.
Yeah.
It's like each day I come out and I say, I love you, kale. I love you, kale. And it makes me feel good. And the fact that they're making it through the winter when even planting them, we planted them quote unquote late, and people are saying, oh, they're not going to grow. And they grew like crazy, and they were giving us greens almost through Christmas.
Wow. Wow. That's unheard of, I think. And spectacular that you have a little greenhouse made out of plastic tarp and some cinder blocks.
Now that I'm speaking with you, I've even got this crazy idea that I could put like little disposable hand warmers or something under the greenhouse to warm up the temp just a little bit for them. I got plans now for this
Well,
kale.
it's just like it's have you seen the movie Martian?
I haven't yet.
Okay, there's a scene where he does this whole thing with his plants, and it's the only source of food that he has. Anyway, so I don't want to spoil it, but it reminds me of the scene from Martian.
We're having fun, and it feels good to have roots. When we were on Maui's, I was so busy with my different programs that I wasn't planting, but my healing there was actually, we had a garden that was overgrown before we moved into this home, and we planned on someday growing things there. And so while I never got to planting, I weeded a lot. And that weeding of putting my hands in the earth felt really good and really grounding. And so now taking it to the next extent of being able to grow things. And I can't claim to plant the seeds. Jessica did. She planted all of it, but I've like rallied the troops to the kale. We've even had baby greens recently. I have no idea how in the world baby greens started coming up in December. And I'm like, come on, guys, we can make it through it together. And it feels great.
Yeah. You're even inspiring plants. You did a new level.
Well, I go out there and each day, and it's crazy, but it makes you feel good. I pet each one of the kale, and I say, I send you love, I send you love, I send you love. And I think sending them love is really sending the love back to myself.
Interesting. How do you think that when you're sending a love to them, do you mean when you see them sprouting up, the love comes back to you?
What I mean by that is the act. Let's see. I was recently interviewing Dr. James Doty. He's the founder of Sea Care. It's a compassion and kindness organization out of Stanford. It was funded by the Dalai Lama.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dalai Lama, I'll butcher the quote, has said something about kindness and compassion being a selfish act that is the most important selfish act.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sending love to anyone else is actually a beautiful selfish act. You're the one who gets the most out of it.
Ah, I see. Got it.
You can't help but feel better about yourself when you're truly sending love. Not saying I love you when you don't
Right.
really love yourself, but sending love to somebody is like you have to turn up your inner flame so much that it has enough to come out, to shine
Right.
out.
Right.
And so if you're shining bright enough to shine out to somebody else and give them love, you're glowing too. You have to be.
Right. Right. It's a heart opener. Just like when you're watching a show or something and you see a commercial that opens your heart, just the act of sending love actually opens your heart as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
so
get it.
each day I'm going out to my kale and I'm saying, I send you love. And I send you, and they've been making it. In fact, a week or two ago, we had a surprise January rainstorm and the stalks themselves got green. Like triangles, the pattern of a kale triangle along the stalk was like crimson green. It was like ready to take off for the spring, and it's like mid-January.
Wow. Wow. That's very cool. It's a perfect way to transition into change, right? Because, the plants, it's interesting. You plant the seed, and what happens is you plant the seed, and the seed sits in the soil, and it doesn't even know what it is, right? It doesn't know if it's going to be kale, a rose bush, or an oak tree. It really doesn't know what it's going to be.
Well, we
You
haven't
plant,
asked it.
yeah, we have that. Well, the seed doesn't know. I mean, I'm using the seed as a metaphor for ourselves when we go through this. The seed goes in, it's in this dark soil. It doesn't know where it's going, what to do. But with love, care, nurturance, growth, water, it basically then starts, breaking the soil of the surface. So, like, think about this tiny little seed having to break the surface of this, this heavy soil above it, maybe soil above it.
Hmm.
But that's pretty big for a little seed. But it goes through and then it bursts through the top and then it starts growing. And then it starts looking and like, oh, wow. It doesn't even know. Like, when you have the first couple of sprouts, they're so small, it really
Yep.
doesn't know what it is. And then it gets kind of it grows and it still doesn't know. It's kind of like the classic story of the ugly duckling. It looks around. And it's like, well, I see around me, a tomato plant, but I don't know if I'm a tomato plant. Maybe I'm a tomato plant, grows around.
Mr.
Looking.
Tomato, am I a tomato plant too?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's totally like the ugly duckling. You're like, I must be a tomato, or maybe I'm kale. I'm not sure, but I see this stuff around me, and I think I'm that. And then it kind of grows up to a certain point in which, it actually grows at a certain trajectory, and then it kind of knows what it is over time. And then it goes through another, then probably the winter comes. And in some cases, some of the plants, not yours, not your miracle kale, but some of them kind of like, okay, now it's time to transition to the next stage, which is, those plants die off, they fertilize the soil. And then some of those plants come back, if they're perennials, they'll come back and do it all over again. But plants are such a perfect analogy.
Dr. Roger Teal, he wrote a book, This Life is Joy. And he talks about when you plant seeds, and he says every good farmer knows, and I didn't know, but I guess I'm not a good farmer, that you have to pack the soil down really well. Because if it's too easy for the seed to grow, they won't grow strong roots, and they won't survive.
Fascinating.
And so you actually need to harden the soil or make there be a good challenge in order to grow your roots strong. And I think for every transition, it's why transitions aren't always, I like to say kind, gentle, easy, good, but they're often damn hard.
Yeah.
They're often ugly.
Yeah.
But it's oftentimes I don't wish it, but the uglier, the more difficult, the more challenging the transition, the more we dig deep.
Right. Absolutely. And the stronger foundation we have, as you said. And so
Yeah.
I actually so what's been happening for me, and I know this has happened for you several times in your life.
We've never had transition,
Yeah.
CJ.
And actually, so I'll tell you how I came up to this book. Um I'm going through a new process where I'm trying to let spirit lead. And
Mhm.
so to let God lead or whatever you want to call it. So I'm meditating, and I'm actually meditating where I have these structured supports because I'm doing chiropractic work. And anyway, so I have these supports, and I'm looking backwards, and I'm doing this meditation,
So
and
it's supporting the back of your head.
yeah, back of my neck. And I'm looking, I wake up from or not wake up, or open my eyes for my meditation.
Hmm.
And this book, the spine of this book is showing up. And
Transitions.
yeah, and I thought, oh, I guess I'm supposed to read that book. So I pick up this book, and it's actually the perfect book to help me through a rather challenging time
Hmm.
where I'm actually going through transition. And
Is
it's
that
interesting.
Transitions for Dummies?
No, it's called Transitions Making Sense of Life's Changes by William Bridges.
Beautiful,
He's written
beautiful.
two beautiful, beautiful books. And if you ever find yourself in transition, I highly recommend these books. And he says strategies for coping with the difficult, painful, and confusing times in your life. Because as you said, when packing the soil, life packs the soil down
Oh,
on
yes.
us, and right, it's hard, and so we suffer. And so I think for me, reading this book helped me suffer less.
Hmm. Let
Um,
you know that it's all okay just as it is.
yeah, to kind of it can be hard, but you can embrace it
Hmm.
at the same time. So for me, what's interesting is, and I don't know if this happened for you too, but we're reading all these books about people who are doing inspiring things. We've done inspiring things
Hmm.
ourselves. They're making changes. And those changes are generally precipitated by something, right? Like, tell me, you've had like two near-death
I've had
experiences.
two near-death experiences. I've had, I was racing in Europe many years ago trying to make it to Tour de France. I was hit by a car then. Jessica was very ill. She's so much better now, was very ill. And we ended up having to leave Maui to get her healthy.
Right.
And so we have had these big punctuation marks in our life where it's, for lack of another term, you're getting unrooted. You're
Yeah.
you're getting yanked right out of the soil.
Yeah. And so they talk about job change,
Hmm.
which you've done. They talk about new family, which you're considering.
Hmm.
They talk about moving, and they talk about death and birth as being like the five things that cause us the most stress. And they cause us the most stress because, in fact, what they do is they force us into a transition. They're life changes that we make that then precipitate into transition, right? We're just transitioning from the known in Hawaii to the unknown where you are now in the Northeast, you
Yeah,
know?
and what's fascinating about that move was it has been the most positive, beautiful, incredible, wonderful. This show came out of that move. And
Hmm.
yet at the time I had a ruse that I was playing, a role you could even say that I was playing, which is I don't want to go back. 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 And
Go
and
back to Hawaii, go back to the way it was,
go
go
back
back.
to the Northeast. So I
Ah,
grew
okay,
up in the Northeast, and
right.
and it's a beautiful part of the country, but Hawaii is Hawaii,
Yeah,
and
lots of kale in Hawaii.
yeah, and
No
I
problem
did
going
not want
there.
to leave my Hawaii. Um, but what you resist persists, or it comes back twofold. So it was coming to get me and saying, you're going, but I've done a lot of work, and I have a lot of work still to do. But I've done a lot of work, and so I say it's a ruse because on one level I'm saying I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. On another level I'm saying, and when you get there, you're going to be saying this is great, this is great, this is great
Mm-hmm.
because I know wherever I am, I will flip that switch and make as much peace with it. Not just peace, I'll find a way, like the plant that's repotted, to say, okay, this is my soil now, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I was resistant. I
Yeah.
wasn't. I wasn't saying. And it's something I get to work on being better. And Jessica calls me on it all the time when change is coming no matter what. I joked in the beginning, resistance is futile.
Right.
When you know the change is coming, you can fight it and just make it harder on yourself, which is in a sense what I did, drag out the inevitable when we really needed to get her back and get her healthy. You can drag that out. We didn't realize what was going on at the time.
Right.
If I had known, I would have had her out of there in a heartbeat.
Right.
You can drag it along, and you're still going to, chances are, end up in the same consequence, except that you might be even weaker from all the struggles you've gone through.
Right.
Or you can embrace it and say, all right, this isn't what I had in mind, but let's go for it.
Right.
And let's just see what comes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the thing that I really appreciate about this book is that it provides a structure of what happens. And so what's interesting is that, so for my personal situation is that I've been interviewing a lot of parenting on the Fired Up with CJ show, on my radio show. So I've been interviewing a bunch of people on parenting, and I have two sons, one who's 14 and the other one who's 16. And the other one who's 16, is a year and a half from now, he's going to go to college. And so I've been interviewing and talking to all these parenting experts, what kind of things can you expect during this transition? Or what can you expect? And what I heard is it's a transition, it's a transition. And, your parenting style has to really shift during that time from kind of like a more hands-on to a more hands-off. And that's like I've been in the hands-on mode for, probably 14, 16 years. So to all of a sudden be on the hands-off mode, it takes a conscious effort to actually switch to this other place. So not only that so much, the change that I was thinking about was I need to change my parenting style. But as I started thinking more and more about the change, I recognized, like, wait a second, they're going to be out of the house. Like my husband and I, and then I've been recognize, like, oh my gosh, things are going to change pretty dramatically. And so really from reading these books that precipitated a change, the change actually got so big that it turned into a transition, which I think is so interesting.
But now this sounds like a double transition, because you have the transition, you're still at least a year and a half off from one piece of the transition. But it's gotten so big that it's coming in waves. So this is wave number one of it here.
It is. It's totally wave number one. And the thing that is so interesting that this book helped me recognize is that there are three stages. There's an ending, a neutral zone, and then he describes it as the neutral zone and then a new beginning. And he spends a lot of time mostly talking about the endings, because oftentimes in the endings we're resisting. So you called it resistance, but what he said is it's basically a period in which a lot of indigenous cultures go through this rite of passage. So that you're actually going through a transition. You're conscious of where you're.
I think that would make it much. That makes it more of a healing experience.
Yes. Yeah. So it's something that you look forward to, right? You're saying, how can you, when you move to New Jersey, you're like, how can I actually, okay, I'm going to look forward to this. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to love being here. But if you don't really know that something is ending, you don't really know that something else is beginning, and you don't know that you're going through a process. So I think we struggle. Because we like the familiar, right? Our bodies crave homeostasis, so we want to go back to where it was. No, I want to go back to Hawaii, where it's there's sunshine and macadamia pancakes, and many other things that I want to go back. And I just went to Hawaii.
Oh, my Nut energy balls! Those were fantastic.
I want those, and the coffee is so good. So, but what we resist is the ending, because we don't like being in the ending. And this is the thing that I was like a light bulb popped out of my head. He said, basically, there are 5 aspects to the natural ending process. There's disengagement, where you start pulling back. When you start, there's this period, and this happens in relationships. I think you kind of like, it's not working anymore. And you can kind of feel yourself pulling back from being engaged anymore with that person or the situation or the job or whatever it is. And then after you disengage, and these aren't necessarily in stages, these are just things that happen. There's a dismantling, because even when you disengage, you have built all these external structures around you. And so just like when you were moving from Hawaii, you had to actually pick up your bags and put them and start packing them away. You're
Yeah.
dismantling everything. And that's a huge thing. So if I think about it in my parlance, like I'm disengaging from the kind of parent and my role as a parent as I defined it before. And I have to dismantle even the way that like the things around us, what I do, my behaviors. And like my son's like, can you get me a snack? I'm like, and I'm about to like go get him a snack. I'm like, no. You can go get your snack yourself, or you can drive in your car, go do that. You have to dismantle all the external things.
Do
And
you let
then,
them know that why you're doing it?
yeah, I did. I said, I said, Mom's going to start changing, just so you know, because I realized that my behavior is not necessarily the best for you, because I want you to be independent. And if you don't learn how to do things on your own and know that you can do things on your own, it's going to hurt you later on. And so I'm doing this because I love you, even though it may not look loving, because I'm not doing as much for you, but it's really for your benefit. And then the other part that I think is so hard is disidentification. So you can no longer identify with CJ. So for me, for a long time, I was CJ, and then I became Jida and Caden's mom. Like I no longer even had a name. Like Jida and Caden's mom. Like, and they're like, "What's your name again?" I'm like, "Just call me Jida and Caden's mom." I get it. My identity is shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And now I come out and it's like, wow, I have a new identity because I'm no longer like mom. I'm no longer, that kind of mom. So who am I? So you go through this identity crisis during this time.
It's a fascinating thing. Going back to Maui, it is so common to hear people with names like River or Rainbow
Yeah.
or oh, just anything under the sun,
I love
Crystal,
that.
and
Yeah.
and oftentimes people take on a new name when they come to Maui to give themselves a new identity, or to plant the seed for the new identity that the old person who was John on the mainland, who now becomes Jaya on Maui or something.
I love that. That's interesting. And they talk about indigenous cultures, they have these rite of passages that, when you turn 13 or whenever you become a man, you go out into the forest. They literally force you to dismantle the environment that you're in and disengage from the community that you're in so that you can find yourself. So they throw these kids out into the forest, and they come back, and when they come back they have different names because they are no longer the person that they used to be. So I swear these tribal cultures are genius because they kind of like they make us realize like, hey, you're a man now, and your name is, whatever your new name is. Your name is, John Smith or whatever it is if you come back. But they recognize that you change identity. So it's disengagement, dismantling, disidentification, disenchantment, and then disorientation. And the disenchantment, they said, is, when you reach a certain point and you're like, I used to love this job. But this is when I was at Microsoft. I love this job. I was so identified. People were like, where are you from? Like, I'm from Microsoft. I'm a Microsoft employee. I was so identified with it. And then at a certain point, I'm like, I don't even want to be a Microsoft person. You become disenchanted with the original dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part is really hard, too, because if you aren't that, then who are you? Then you go into the disorientation piece. But there's this kind of disenchantment part that happens, that these are all things that are kind of part of the ending. And then the disorientation, which you're like, I don't know what where's up. I don't know where's down. I don't know where I'm going. I just feel like I'm spinning around a lot. And that's kind of another hallmark of endings. And what was interesting for me is I felt all of these different things. I could have a felt experience of disengagement, dismantling, disidentification, disenchantment, and disorientation. And I didn't know what it was. So I get to, I don't know if you've talked to people, but they'll say, "Oh, I feel like I'm so lost. I don't know what's going on." And they won't really, if you're your dear friend, they'll tell you, but oftentimes they suffer in silence when they're going through this.
Well, what's interesting is when I think of somebody as being lost, I often think of the darkness before the dawn. I'm probably the first one to say, you're a lot less lost than you think you are now that you've identified that. The fact that you feel that you're lost is a huge step forward on that process. You're probably just about there, wherever there is.
Yeah. And so it's It's recognizing that there's an ending, and
Hmm.
that's why you're feeling that way. Because I'll talk to clients and they'll say, "Well, I just feel like a loser. I don't know what I'm doing." Because they're in that stage of maybe ending a job and
Hmm.
going on to a new one. So they're in that stage where they don't even know what's going on. They don't know where to go next, which is why they hire a coach. But I think it's just to recognize like it's okay. Like that is part of the process. If you're there, that is part of the process of transition, and it's okay.
There's a very wise friend of mine, Nikki, and she used to tell me that when you're feeling that way, that's creative angst. And she works with a lot of artists and a lot of musicians, and she would say that feeling of being flipped upside down and backwards, even like you said, person made a derogatory statement toward themselves. That kind of feeling is often maybe it's the motor building up to speed right before you engage it into gear. It's
Hmm.
spooling up that creative energy, and then you're just going to go.
Exactly. Well, I hate to tell you,
Hmm.
and I think it varies per person, but the stage afterwards is the neutral zone. And that's where I'm like, okay, I'm an ending. I get that I'm an ending,
Hmm.
and I'm feeling all these different things. And knowing that I'm in that stage makes it easier. It doesn't mean that you don't suffer from it. It's just like the compacted roots that you're
Hmm.
talking before. You still kind of feel it. You feel like it's hard.
But
But
much
then,
easier if you can observe, hey, I'm suffering now, that's okay. And even like you're saying, you're reading in this book, it says it's okay to be where you are right now.
right, you're suffering, but you don't have to suffer because this is just a natural stage of what's happening.
Hmm.
And this is what's happening. You're getting disengaged or you're getting disoriented. It's okay to be disoriented. Like you said, this is part of the creative process, and this is what's happening. Okay, so this is the hardest part. After that, you go into the neutral zone, which
I'm picturing Austin Powers. Help! I'm in the neutral zone.
and in the neutral zone, you stay in that period of disorientation, and you. I haven't read through this, but what I understand about it through other kind of work like this is that you just stay open and curious, and you
Hmm.
don't try to move to the next thing, because the desire to want to move and jump to the next thing to just get the pain over with, so I can kind of go to a different thing is so high. So I've noticed that for me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a business. Or I'm going to do that because I did software. I'm going to start a software business. And I just started boom, 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 like marching down this
Whoa,
path.
whoa, whoa.
Well, because you don't, people don't like being in the neutral zone because it's being in the void where there's nothingness. They don't know where they're going, but yet life is orchestrating some stuff to happen.
This is where our beautiful show came from, which was
Yeah.
we came out of Maui, we got back to New Jersey, Jessica's starting to heal, and it's what are we going to do next? And I said something great is coming, but I
Mm,
don't have a flipping clue what it is. And in the past, I would always go jump on the horse to the
right.
rescue and dive right into things. And that was always head over heart, or me trying to solve fear of I need to be doing something now this minute.
Right.
And I would inevitably take myself, free us from one dungeon, and throw us right back into another.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? Like it's a dungeon, it's in a prison created by yourself,
Yes.
right? For not wanting to wait and be patient and to hang out and to be open and to try things. So how did the show get born out of that?
A lot of walks, a lot of meditation, a lot of quiet time, and really soul searching and asking, um, where is my heart at? What does it like to do more than anything else? Okay, I have no idea how to do that, but I've got an idea. I like to speak. I did all these interviews last year. It was phenomenal. That went great. And I put together all the pieces that I thought were fun for me. And then I didn't try to come up with the answer from there. I went back
Mm.
on more walks.
Now that takes a lot of faith to do that. How were you able to engender the faith to do that?
Because of my past accidents, on a day-to-day basis, I am challenged with this as much as anybody else of staying in the place of everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But on an overall arc of life or arc of experiences, even, I can see every single time that it's always happened for a reason and always worked out. And so if I'm back in New Jersey where I said I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
be, there has to be a beautiful reason for it. And it was both a faith, something great's going to happen from it, and it was also I don't know if hard-headedness is the right word, but I'll use it for lack of another term.
Right.
A hard-headedness that I'm not going to settle for playing it small. And
Mm.
all my mind could come up with was small things, small, safe things. Even when the idea of the show came to us, we talked about this. The show hadn't come about yet, and we were thinking of making something similar to what I've done before, something in the running or coaching genre, or
Right.
in the overcome injury genres, because that was comfortable and safe and a known, but it didn't feel big enough. It didn't feel part of that grand plan of you made this huge transition, 7,000 miles. This is not about playing it safe now. This is about growing into your own.
You know what this reminds me of is in coaching, they have an exercise and like, well, what would you like to do next? And they're like, oh, I'd like to actually do a couple interviews with people. And it's like make that 100 times bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Then what would you want to do? And, maybe like, well, I want to have, this killer, like the number 4 self-help show on iTunes. Like it's something to like you force yourself to get like a gigantic idea, because I think the tendency is that we come up with the safe known. Like we have the safe and known, we have an ending, we move to another place, but we're going to kind of draw a straight line versus like a line that's like, a ray of sunshine, like all over the place, that there's these rays of opportunities from this point, the center point of your ending, but we actually draw the safe point, directly off to the right in the future.
It's so cool that you mentioned that, because it's so true that we are such creatures of habit, creatures of comfort, that we can be so close to greatness, and we don't leap for it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're I don't know. This is going to sound like just the weirdest analogy. You're a car washer,
Right.
and you look at the fire department, and you look at their trucks, and you think, I'd love to ride on one of those one day. I'd
Right.
love to work in the fire department, and maybe you even lose your job at the car wash, and then there's they're hiring for the fire department.
Right.
But instead of going over and seeing if you can get a job on the fire department, you go over and you ask if you can wash their trucks.
Right.
Because that's what you
That
knew.
gets me close.
But that's exactly what we
true.
do. We
Yeah.
don't reach for that, sorry everybody, rung on the ladder.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think and then we don't wait because we feel so uncomfortable. The fact that you
the
walked
waiting's
and
the most
walked and
important. That's the
walked and walked.
incubation.
Yeah. Because I think because the universe has to have time to orchestrate things, right? So take the time, be patient. And that's one of the hardest things to do. They talk about people who feel the inner transition happening. They know something's happening. And so instead of saying, hey, something's happening for me, I'm just going to hang out and figure out what's happening and know that I'm going through this process of transition, they jump to the next thing. They move to a different place, just because for the heck of it, right? They quit their job. They date their secretary and marry someone new. It's whatever it is. Like, but they know that something is happening, but they don't want to necessarily face ending. So they just try to do something that feels like a new beginning, but it's a safe new beginning.
I think for all of us, maybe the most important part here is not action, but is presence.
Right.
Be present of where you're at. If you, we had on recently Matt Kahn, Whatever Arises, love that. Beautiful book. An amazing human being. And he talks about, and it's really so true, that the fastest periods of growth are when we move the slowest.
And go on the inside, because that's what you did, right?
Yes.
You were slow enough and introspective enough that just like the seed that's planted in the ground, we talked about in the very beginning, where
Hmm.
it's dark, it doesn't know where it's growing. It's just quietly being supported and nurtured around the pack soil around it. But it's kind of going, it's like it's tuning in on the inside versus kind of focusing on the outside. Like, what are all you doing? Is that a tomato plant? Is that a, what am I? It's just focusing on the inside and figuring out who you are at the essence. And that's so hard to do because we don't
It's
even know. We don't even know how to do that, frankly.
it's something that I've had a lot of clients in transition, and it's something every single one of them. What I've told them to do is, if the weather allows, get out in nature and go sit under a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Just get yourself out of it. Put yourself on a hillside. Put yourself in the middle of nowhere. Leave yourself behind and just be. And the
Right.
answer may not come to you today or tomorrow, but the answer will come to you. And it will
Right.
be a much better answer than you could ever think your way out of.
Yeah. I just read, and we both interviewed a guy from Stanford, Bernie Roth, and he has an
Yes.
exercise where he just says, "Who am I? Who am I?" And you just keep on answering that over and over and over again. And as you may actually, the very first time you ask a question, you'll get to the outer layer of the onion. But as you go deeper and deeper, you're going to get into the essence of who you are. And he said, it's funny. He said, yeah, a lot of time the answers aren't that profound. He's like, we do this at Stanford, and the answers are not that interesting. But they're interesting for that person because you're just going deeper and deeper. It's a process of
Hmm.
introspection. So, anyways, that's what I learned about transitions this week, and
So
I
what
thought,
does that mean specifically for you? What are you
yeah,
what have you learned that is your next doing or not doing?
yeah, I think it's recognizing, like I said before, that I'm actually in these various. I'm actually probably in all five of these stages of the disengagement, dismantling, and going, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing, so I can kind of relax. So when it's happening, I can stop and go, and like, okay, right, that's I'm just when I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my god, I can go, oh, okay, that's what's supposed to be happening. So it's to remain calm and present while it's happening. That's
Hmm.
one thing that I'm doing. And the other thing is as a control freak, it's not to jump to the next thing, to say, okay, I'm just going to be open to whatever comes. I'm going to be open and curious and just be open and go into finding why. So for me, what's happening is I'm noticing that I'm resisting
Hmm.
the openness, and I'm more likely to like, I want to plan and start moving forward. And I just have to stop and hold myself still and say, no, now it's not the time. It's time to be open and curious, be open and curious, be open and curious. And so those are kind of my most immediate next steps, is to just be in, because if you're not open and curious and listening
Hmm.
and being introspective, you're going to miss the call, you know, the
So
call
are
from your
you
spirit.
slowing yourself down to hear the call?
Probably not. I'm just I'm at the stage right now where I've recognized that I have to slow down, and I don't even recognize I have to slow down. Honestly, what I recognize is that things are ending,
Hmm.
and that means it's kind of okay now. I know that things are going to be changing, and I'm ending, and I'm just trying to stay open. I think one of the things that you can do are the things that you mentioned. I'm not at that stage yet, but it's, slowing down, going on the inside, tuning into things. The other thing I'm doing is I'm meeting a lot of people to just like kind of just be open to what's out there. If you're walking, for me, when I'm walking
Hmm.
by myself, there's going to be some level of information there, but I get a lot of information from meeting with people
There's
because,
Robert Moss. He wrote a beautiful book, Sidewalk Oracles.
mm-hmm,
And he talks about how you can put a question out there to the universe even before you step outside,
mm-hmm,
and either look for the first 3 to 5 things that you see to get the answer there, or he has a term for it, which I'm not going to come up with now, for catching it out of the ether, catching it from snippets of conversations that you hear walking down the street.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea.
So
So,
you can put that out there and see what comes to you, what's transmitted to you that way.
yes, exactly, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm doing that right now. I'm literally just recognizing at this weekend that I'm ending. So now I haven't gone to the neutral zone yet nor have I read the chapter on it in this book. But I
Don't
will.
put me in the neutral zone yet. I'm
I
not
will.
ready.
No, I'm ready. I think I'm ready to be in that zone, or I'm in between the ending and the neutral zone.
Mhm.
And and knowing that neutral zone. I mean, how long were you walking around not
Few
knowing?
months. Few months.
Yeah, it can be a
So,
few months.
and there's definitely a time of I want to get going. I feel the pressure to get going, but I don't know what it is yet. And I have made the learning, instead of calling it mistake, the learning of moving too fast in the past.
Mm,
And I wanted to make sure. That's how I've ended up on a book tour where I'm going, what in the world happened? So many cool things that were slightly, I like to say, our lives, the most out of sync our lives are. And note I said out of sync means we're actually, chances are, just 1 degree off from having the gears meshing together. And so
mm,
instead of them meshing smoothly, they're slamming into each other,
right,
and everything seems that the car's bucking up and down. If
right.
you can remember from learning how to drive a manual, everything's just trying to get it into gear. It's a complete mess. When all it is 1 degree out of sync, tiny
Mm,
little degree, and everything moves smoothly.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is a beautiful. That's a perfect analogy, right?
You can't
Because
jam the gears.
we feel like, oh, but it's just maybe just a little, you know, little gear over or whatever, or not a little. What is it? Socket over,
Hmm.
and we can be in flow.
Yeah, it's like watching a great martial artist, whether that's Bruce Lee. What's the? Oh, forgive me. Not Bruce Lee. The other Lee. The more recent Lee. Whoever it is, even a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jackie Chan,
Right.
um, or a Tai Chi master. It's a slight sidestep.
Yeah.
It's not this big move to avoid somebody. You don't need the big move. It's a
Yeah.
very gentle move to the side. Carry the energy around.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, that is my next goal. We will talk about that later.
I
I
love it.
know more. I'm
So,
not there yet.
So going from there, I thought maybe before we wrap things up, we had
Sure.
some guests write in this week, and I want to start answering a few questions on
Sure.
the air. So to answer the questions, maybe I'll throw the questions at you first, then you can throw
Okay,
them
sure.
back at me.
Okay.
So we have from Grace. This kind of falls in line of transitions, which is very simple and profound. How do I achieve my dreams?
Mm. You know, the first thing I think is get clear with what your dreams are. See, oftentimes we have these dreams, we know that we're not achieving them, but we
Hmm.
actually haven't articulated very clearly what are your dreams? What do they look like? What do they feel like? If there's this great set of questions in neurolinguistic programming, there's 7 questions on
Hmm.
creating a well-defined outcome, and I think they're the ones that I actually step my clients through. So it's what do you want? How do you know when you get there? On a 5 sensory thing, what will it smell like? What does it
Yes.
look like? What does it feel like? What stops you from getting there? What do you need in order to get there? Because what stops you are actually probably the roadblocks. That's actually really important to get through, understand too, because if you don't know what's blocking you, you can't remove it,
Hmm.
right? So if it may be an attitude, a belief, whatever it is, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not smart enough, I can't make that change, I don't make enough money, whatever what's stopping you. You could watch any of our shows. Both of us have radio shows with guests on how to actually shift through that belief. And then let's see, I can't remember the other two, but basically just asking those questions, and I can actually provide those
Yeah.
questions if we want to put it on a blog post too.
And I would say grab your pen over typing, but either way, and get journaling,
Mm,
and really put the pen to paper, make it a physical thing to figure out exactly what it is, and that kinesthetic action helps really become clear what it is that you want to do. And then I've been reading recently Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
hmm
Kind of doing the Bob Proctor method. If he said it's the book that he's been reading for like 58 years, and just keeps reading it. And he talks about the strangest of analogies in it. I was reading yesterday, which is how to become a criminal. And he's not suggesting anybody become a criminal, but he says when you're first exposed to a criminal act, you find it repulsive. If you keep on being exposed to a criminal act or criminal element, you become comfortable with it. If you keep on becoming exposed to a criminal element, at some point you'll say, I might as well give this a try myself. So what that has to do with our dreams is when we come up with what those blockages are, if we can just picture that end goal, that I want to have top show in the country or the world or something. Instead of going, well, I can't do that. We understand, okay, there are going to be some things that I have to move past. But I really want to, at the same time, focus on, for lack of another term, brainwashing myself. Instead of brainwashing myself to become a criminal, brainwash myself to become a success. See it, feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it, burn that, like you're saying, into my memory and just keep going through it over and over and over and over again. Something when we had Bob Proctor on recently, he's saying you don't need to know all the steps to get there. In fact, usually when we try to know all the steps, we go nowhere because that is so intimidating. But if you get that big picture goal, and I love what you're saying of identify some key places, usually they're internally as to why I can't move forward.
Right.
Note I said because I'm challenged with this as much as anybody else. You got to go after that wiring that you were gifted
Right.
through your whole life.
And I think actually the other thing that you said is not only get clear with what it is, but take one small step. It doesn't have to be 20 steps. Just take one step towards your dream.
One step is huge. One tiny step is
If you want to
huge.
be a chef, just start cooking for a friend, start cooking for a nonprofit, whatever,
I think there's momentum. I have an expression. I call it King Mo. All hail King Mo. And King Mo is my greatest friend in the world. King Mo is momentum. And momentum starts from being where you're at and just getting the locomotive moving. It doesn't even need to go in the right direction.
Right, it doesn't.
It just needs to overcome inertia of dead stop. You'll be able to direct it along the way, but get it moving. And what happens is we are wired, we're animals. In nature, you move to survive. We think more clearly when we move. We act with more precision when we move, and things come to us. Energy is always moving around us. If we're stuck and not moving, no opportunities can come to us. What are they going to pound down the door? Literally. But if you're out and about, if you're taking even tiny steps forward, it's road magic. We all know, we've all been on road trips and something special has happened. Why? Because we're in motion. We give the universe the greatest opportunity to bring us gifts when we're moving.
Right. Or meeting or going out there, which is why I'm actually meeting with friends more, because that's when the opportunities come. And I think that answers one of the questions. Someone had said, how do I get unstuck? Can you read that question?
Yes. Let's go through the different questions here.
There was one that ended it saying, how do I get unstuck?
I need strength. My husband is so this is... Okay, so the one before I said it was from Grace, how do I achieve my dreams? This one's from Joanne. I need strength. My husband is an active alcoholic. I am stuck.
Yeah, I actually have a really, really fantastic interview with Chris Grosso. I can't remember. He's called like the indie spiritualist. So you can find that on Fired Up with CJ's on my homepage, and then also on my homepage or on my YouTube channel. But the thing is that the hard thing about having a husband that's an alcoholic, and we were talking, and the reason why I pointed that is mostly about the caretakers, people who are in relationship with people who have addictions. What do you do? So the whole show, there's like I think an hour show on what you can do and how to get unstuck. But I think the key thing is recognizing that if that person doesn't want to change, you really cannot do anything. I mean, I think it's recognizing that you are stuck and then using your idea of getting momentum. And the momentum that I would suggest is there's a whole bunch of groups. I think it's Al-Anon. They're for people who have, I would go to Al-Anon or start, going out there and trying to figure out how to change yourself, because that is possible.
Well, I think
change
that's
how you're relating to it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, which is it could be a matter of either changing your internal environment, being at peace with it, no matter what it is, or changing your external environment and choosing at some point that you need to move on. But the first piece is getting the gears moving inside of yourself,
Right.
period.
Right. Yeah. So that's what
So,
I would do for that one.
so Joanne, it's getting the locomotive going on the inside.
Yes,
Oh,
and Joanne and Grace, thank you for writing in.
I send
Honestly, it's
them.
great.
I'm sure you do as well. Send them all the love in the world.
Yeah,
Send them
absolutely.
all the love. There's one more question I want to go to for today.
Sure.
So, because I think this is very important, and I'm not even sure what's going to come up from it, but it's from Juliet in the UK, and she writes in, I tested HIV positive in 2005, and my life has never been the same again. Is there any way
Mhm.
you know that I can get control of the virus without tablets, which have so many side effects?
Mm. Mm.
And Juliet, I don't claim to be, I don't claim to have any concept of this, but it's interesting. Recently had a guest on, and I have to see if that one comes from me, Dr. Dawson Church. And he was talking about epigenetics and a study of people with AIDS in the early days, and how those who were on, this was before when people really passed away young from this. And they did people who thought positively about their treatment versus people who didn't. And just that positive belief made a huge change. I'm
Mm.
looking at your question now, Juliet. It's really strange. And it says, I tested HIV positive. And I'm looking at the word positive differently.
Mm.
And I certainly can't claim that just positivity, well, on some level it may be able to, but I can't claim that just positivity is going to make all the difference in the world. But if there's a way to embrace what you have and look at it as a friend and a teacher, even if it's a friend or teacher that we want to let go of, I think it may open some opportunities to see things differently
Mhm.
for yourself.
Mhm. And what I hear intuitively is about self-love.
Yeah.
It's all about loving yourself. It's about loving yourself during that whole process because it's hard and there's like even giving yourself a hug when it's happening because I think it's one of the hardest things that I can imagine people going through and really just surrounding yourself with love and knowing that there is love around you all the time. Um,
I
yeah.
think if you can do that, and that's not easy for any of us. But if you
Hmm.
can put yourself in, like Ravikant's book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. If
Hmm.
you can put yourself in that state of, I love myself, if not 24/7, then we'll call it 12/7,
Hmm.
half of every day, and surround yourself with flowers and beautiful things in your life and notes. This is something Jessica has been doing with me recently that who knows if she'll want me to share on the air, but she's putting these most beautiful notes all around the house about me,
Oh.
and it feels so good. And she does it for herself as well. It's been part of her healing process. And we can all
Mm.
do that. We can put I love you notes all around our house. And so, Juliet, if you have the most romantic love affair with yourself and put yourself into the greatest state of love, um, then no matter what happens, you're going to feel much, much better.
Mm. Beautiful. Wow. That was fun. That was a great show. I think. Hopefully other folks write in and tell us what you think and tell us about the new program that you're putting.
So we're one more step closer to our Inspire
Yeah.
Nation Club.
Yes.
And right now we're trying to determine what's the best platform for this.
Hmm.
So we're still looking probably just a few weeks out. We will move fast once we figure out how we host this thing. And the coolest piece that we've determined at the moment, because it's kind of coming together. How do we help people? How do we share? How do we build this community? Right now, one of the things, and how do we do it with, honestly, not too great of a time commitment?
Right.
Because, this is already a
7 days.
pretty good locomotive here.
Right.
And the most exciting one right now is to have a weekly webinar.
Yay.
It'll be more of an experience than a webinar. Is kind of this cheap little thing. You throw somebody on the mic, you go for an hour, and then it ends. We're going to have an experience, and we're going to take people's questions live, and we may have some meditation on it, and really both help to, I don't know if pump up people is the right word, but certainly get everybody energized for the week ahead. And at the same time, we'll do some review so that we'll say, hey, did you hear Bob Proctor last week? He was talking about this, that, and the other thing. Or Dan Millman, if you didn't have to catch it, here's how you too can be a peaceful warrior in this coming week. And so we'll just give you snippets, highlights, because who has the time? And so if you don't catch all the shows, that's all right. If you have a burning question, that's great. If you want to hear what some of the pressing concerns are from those around you, and chances are if somebody else has a question, you have that same question too, or at least some variation of it, you'll get that too. So that'll be our Inspire Nation Club, coming soon to an Inspire Nation show near you.
For that one. Woo! We look forward to that. That's great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, CJ. This has been a lot of fun. For anybody else, a last comment on my side of things, which is our meditations we've been doing separately. And for the last few days, we've started incorporating our meditations with our main show, with the Inspire Nation show. We're going to do that for a few weeks. And then probably about the beginning of February, we're going to have our second show, which is the Inspire Nation Meditation Show. So stay tuned for that one as well, because if one is good, then two is twice the fun, right?
That's great.
So thank you so much, CJ. Thank you, everybody, for listening. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, embrace the transition and the neutral zone, and shine bright. Woo-hoo! Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!